And it was like the Holy Spirit whispered to my heart, Lori, you are just the mom. You're just the mom. You cannot be mom and dad. You cannot fill the void. I am here to do that for you and with you. And that was really a pivotal moment in my journey that I could relax. And I was like, you know what? I am turning in the role of trying to be mom and dad. Welcome to Raising Fatherless Kids, where we believe that
God is a father to the fatherless.
God is a father to the fatherless.
God is the father to the fatherless.
God is a father to the fatherless.
Welcome to Raising Fatherless Kids. I'm so glad you're here, Mom. Christmas is just 22 days away, so to have your time, that's special. So thank you for joining us, and it's my prayer that God will give you peace instead of panic, because 22 days, the countdown is on. I don't know if you started new traditions or if you're just trying to make it to Christmas. I remember it was one of the early years that we had this tradition of building gingerbread houses. They've made it really easy these days. You can buy a kit, you can slather on the icing, you can put on the candy, but they didn't have those back in my day. And so I would bake the gingerbread, I would carve out the different pieces, and then I would assemble it and let the icing dry overnight. And we would collect candy throughout the year. That was a way to keep them from eating the candy that they would get every time they went to church or wherever. And so they would keep this jar for the gingerbread house. And we would assemble this house. And of course, I had to do everything bigger and better. That was what I thought. And we had this giant gingerbread house one year. And so everybody was participating in it. They were all helping to put on the candy, and, they'd run outside. And of course, the perfectionism in me, I would delicately ice the icicles and I would fix it so it would be just perfect. Why was I doing that? But for whatever reason, I was investing a lot of time in this gingerbread house. And I'll never forget, my kids had gone out to play and they had done their job. They had put the candy on, and I had made it perfect. And my daughter came running back in, and she's admiring the gingerbread house, and she's going, Mom, oh, I love it. We did such a good job with this house. And, you're just the mom. You're just the mom. And I'm so glad you had us to put this together and to decorate it. And ladies, I started fuming a little bit, like, just the mom? Just the mom made the gingerbread dough. Just the mom assembled the house. Just the mom has been collecting the candy. And just the mom put the icicles on just right. And it was in that moment that God used that story and that example, that illustration, to kind of tie this bow around my own experience with being a single mom, facing Christmas. Because I was trying to do everything. And not only was I trying to do everything, I wanted to do it just right. I wanted to compensate for the loss of my children not having a dad. They had an absent dad. And Mom, I know you may be feeling the same pressure. Christmas has to be very special. We are going to fill the void of the absence of dad. But Mom, you don't have to do that, because God's presence is with you. And it was like the Holy Spirit whispered to my heart, Lori, you are just the mom. You're just the mom. You cannot be mom and dad. You cannot fill the void. I am here to do that for you and with you. And that was really a pivotal moment in my journey that I could relax. And I was like, you know what? I am turning in the role of trying to be mom and dad. So ladies, I'm so glad you joined us today. Whether your loss is by death, divorce, or desertion, I'm so glad you found us, because the whole purpose of this podcast is to give you encouragement, and especially right now, to let you know you're going to make it. You're going to make it through the Christmas season. And so I want to start with just giving you a few practical tips. Simplify the season. Make it as simple as possible. It's not going to look like it did when you had a husband. It's not going to look like that. You may not have Christmas lights outside your home. Maybe you just get a lighted wreath. Maybe you put a candle in the window. Whatever it is, whatever you can do to simplify, that is going to be crucial. And invite others in. Ladies, one of the key goals for you as a single mom is to share your family, provide an on-ramp for others, and let them into your life. We started this tradition of a caroling party. And no, I would never do a caroling party. Well, we were doing a caroling party actually when my husband was here. And then I had the idea, well, we loved it so much, let's just continue on. So we invited all the neighbors. We hosted it. We said, bring something salty, bring something sweet. And I really believe that was one of the highlights every year for my family because it brought community in and we were not doing it alone. And then protect peace over perfection. I admit that's something that perfection doesn't come natural. The desire for wanting things just right. Give that up because it's not going to look like it did when you had a husband. And for those of you who are sharing family, maybe you have experienced loss by divorce, and so you're blending family and you're back and forth. God is going to give you wisdom. He's going to walk with you through that. And then create moments and don't focus on just the memories and the things that you're missing out. Make new memories. Create new traditions and invite your children to be a part of that. And you'd be amazed at the ideas that they will come up with. And above all of that, invite God. He is present with you and he cares. And so you are just the mom. But as we know, during this season, we hear often that God is Emmanuel. He is God with us. And Isaiah 26:3 says that he will keep us in perfect peace, those whose minds are steadfast, who are focused, and they have put their trust on him. So, Mom, release yourself from trying to do everything. Release yourself from trying to be both mom and dad, because God is Father. That's the theme of this podcast, is that God promises to be a father to the fatherless. And so as we're thinking about being just the mom, my son, Evan, has been sitting here with us today. I'm so glad that Evan has joined us again. You're going to want to go back to an episode where he talked about having a perspective of victory instead of being a victim. He gives great insight because he grew up without an earthly dad. And so I asked him to join us again today because I got in a conversation recently with a room full of mothers who are raising sons without an earthly dad. And I could hear frustration in the room, and I certainly remembered my frustration when I thought I knew everything my son needed from me as his mother. And boy, have I learned a lot, and boy, did I do it wrong. And some things maybe I did right, but I feel like Evan can offer great insight and perspective. So Evan, I'm so glad you came here today to give us some wisdom on that topic.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I want to say that as we talk about you're just the mom, I also want to encourage you and say that that's all that you have to be as well. God is not calling you to be more than what he created you to be. And your children are also not expecting that of you either. Your kids want you to just be mom. And so don't get caught up in this Christmas season as you're running around. Don't get caught up in trying to be more than what God has called you to be, or amount to this next level just because your children don't have a father. You are just the mom, and that is all that your children are asking you to be.
So, Evan, correct me if I'm wrong, and I know he will, and that's, again, why he's here today. The big question is, what do moms think their sons need? And we are women, and we are not men, and we're nurturers. And so, ladies, you may think that your son needs a listening ear, that he needs for mom to be there at the end of the day to hear everything that he wants to share in his heart. And Evan's going to be able to correct us on that one for sure. Now, Evan, I know boys, we're talking about boys and sons, they may need different things from their mom depending on their age. And so I've asked Evan just to give us some practical tips. Moms, we want to comfort. We want to fix their grief. And sometimes we feel like, well, they're not even grieving. What happened? They're just moving on with life, and they don't even seem to notice that. They do notice that dad's not there, but they just they don't want to talk about it. They are busy, and then you fix this meal, and you're expecting to have dinner together every night of the week, and maybe there's been some frustration when those expectations don't match up. And so I'm just going to give the mic to Evan. We're sharing a mic today. But Evan, would you just give some insight to us as moms? Because we really do want to do this well, and we need your help and your perspective. So give us some practical tips on what sons without a dad need from their mom.
Well, yes, there are great differences between men and women, mother and son, and all the things that come with it. I would start by saying I agree that what a son needs varies based off of seasons in life. So when your son is 2 to 5, my mom said that you want to protect and you want to nurture, and that's natural. But your son needs some bumps and some bruises. Your son needs to fall down, and your son in various occasions need to be told to get back up and to try again. Your son doesn't always need to be coddled and comforted in the way that you might feel is natural. When your kids get into middle school age, where they start to have friends and a little bit of a social life as a middle schooler can, you might start to feel that your relationship is slipping away, or that you don't have the same connection that you once did. And I would encourage you, Mom, that this is normal. And in this season, your son might need some more space. So if your son has friends over and they're playing Mario Kart or something else, you might think, let mom in here, let mom have a turn. Mom can be fun, but that is going to be welcomed with, Mom, leave me alone. And this doesn't mean that your son doesn't like you, Mom. This doesn't mean that you're losing your relationship with your son. This is a natural thing, and it's a good wisdom to lean into this a little bit and let your son have some space. And then when your son gets older, you might really feel like, boy, I've really lost my son. Boy, let me call every counselor in the phone book. Let me bring anybody in. I've really lost it with my son because he just doesn't want anything to do with me. He's quiet. I try to talk to him. I've heard in doing ministry with my mom different stories of, I went in there and I sat in his bed and I offered to share feelings for 2.5 hours, and my son looked at me with a blank stare, and I was trying to offer to help. This is not always going to be welcomed with open arms, because when your son is in those teen years, they do have emotions, but men often don't want to talk about emotions. They don't want to talk about that. What a man needs and what your son might need is a full plate of food and to be left alone. And that's okay. And I'll close by saying this too, that you can be encouraged that these are seasons, that those relationships, they'll come back around when your son grows up a little bit and into their young adult years. That relationship will often open back up, and your son will realize, maybe mom is pretty cool, and there's a lot of things to be learned from mom. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have a couple of questions, and that is very helpful. And I wish someone had walked alongside of me during those years, because I didn't know what was happening, truly. And I cried a lot of tears on my pillow thinking, I've lost him. And Mom, we have to be careful, because our children, our sons or daughters, aren't to carry the weight of our grief. And so sometimes we think if our son will just share everything in his heart that he's grieving, he's not even aware that he's grieving. He may not really come to terms with the loss until he becomes a husband and a father one day, or when he reaches some significant milestones. Maybe he does make a big play at the game and it hits him that my dad's not here to watch that. Or maybe he has a big moment of success in his first job or getting his license, and he just needs that affirmation from dad. And no matter what, yes, I would think, Evan, that it's helpful for mom to affirm. I sure did spend my days trying to do that, but we can't replace dad. And so we have to trust that God is at work. He is going to bring those coaches and those men who are going to be able to say a word of affirmation, and maybe we'll be there to hear their hearts when they do need comfort. But it really may not come until later in life where they need that. And so I guess my question for you, Evan, is what is the role of a mom? What does a young man, especially in the years 15 to 18, hold on to your hat? Whew, those are some challenging years, and I think it's just because of how God designed young men as they're growing into manhood, they're bursting into independence. It's just going to be that way if there's a dad in the home or if there's not. But is there anything that a mom can do that would be encouraging for her son?
Well, there's a few ways. I would say that it's really important to pray for your sons. That's really important. And point your children to Christ. If I can turn the lens to our culture that we live in right now, I hear a lot of parents saying, "Well, I don't want to force my kid to go to church," or I don't want to push Jesus on them. I don't want to come across as that way. But I want to boldly say that the world is pushing everything that they possibly can onto your son. There is sin and temptation in this world that is being pushed onto your son, whether you like it or not. And so what we can do as Christ followers, and what you can do, mom, is you can point them to Jesus, and you can direct them back to Christ at every step of the way as the truth for what your son is facing. And I would say, second, what's really important is to affirm your son and to build your son up in the different ways in their life. I feel like I can almost remember a shift when I was in my teen years when my mom started saying, "I'm proud of you." And not that you didn't before, but I can almost remember it was like you were making a conscious decision of, my sons need to hear this. And so as in little ways, in birthday cards and graduation cards, my mom would write, "I'm proud of you, son." And another thing that really meant a lot is that she would say, "I respect you, son," which is really powerful for a mom who is supposed to be the leader and the shepherd over the family, to be giving that respect to her son. But I can tell you that is extremely powerful to hear my mom say, "I respect you, son." There is something in men and in boys that need that, like water to a plant. They need to feel that they're respected, that they're trusted, that they're believed in. And so any ways that you can genuinely express that to your son, they might not give you more than a little smirk in their face, but I can tell you that is powerful when you speak life into your son. And I would just say also is in different seasons is to be real with your son as well. Have fun with your son. You can joke with your son. You can be available to your son is another piece of advice that I would give as well is you don't always have to be so proactive with your son, but you can be prepared for a response. So when your son does show emotion or when they do open up in a rare moment of vulnerability, you as a mom can be prepared to have those conversations or to talk through whatever it is that your son is going through and be ready for those moments. Those are the kinds of things that I really feel made an impact in my life and in my relationship with my mom.
And I would add to that, let him guide you. If he becomes vulnerable and he shares a moment, don't think that's going to be the norm. Like now I can have a cup of coffee waiting every time he comes home and he's going to share his heart, because that's not going to happen, most likely. But as he said, I can remember some moments where with each one of my sons where they had those moments, and it was a tender time, and it was really a sweet moment, a gift from the Lord. But I think more than that, have food ready at all times. And I mean all times. And it's not going to look like he's waiting for that roast beef dinner and you're going to light the candle and you're going to sit down and he's going to be there at 5 o'clock when the dinner's on the table, because you could prepare that dinner at 5 o'clock, but a better plan comes along and you have to be flexible. And again, don't take it personal. But I think he wants to say one other thing, but let me give it back and then I want to give a thought.
Well, I'll let you have another thought, but I was going to respond to what you said about when you said let your son drive the conversation. A few episodes ago, we talked a little bit about victorious versus the victim mindset, and one of those things we talked about was your son having responsibility, not in the way of like do your chores, but in these ways that make your son feel grown up and matured. I would say in those moments, if your son is opening up, it's going to be really easy for you to come across as mom and say, well, what you need to do is, well, son, what you really need to do is this. And you're thinking this, but trust me, you really need to do this. And I can just tell you a really powerful approach is to say, son, what do you think that you need to do in this? It could be a relationship that your son is in, or a decision in school, or they're struggling with friends or things like that, is to say, son, what do you think that you need to do? And allow them to work out those thought processes in their heads instead of always coming across as, well, what you need to do is this, because that's going to, in a way, close your son in and then make you go to the next support group and say, well, my son he just doesn't want to talk to me. He doesn't want to connect. Well, it's because he feels like he's being, the flame inside of him is being put out and he's just being extinguished for what he might have to say. So give those opportunities with your son.
That is so wise. And again, that's the whole reason we're doing this podcast is I want to share some things I didn't understand about raising sons, some things I didn't understand about men. And when you don't have your husband kind of guiding, and often, even when it comes to discipline, you want to have guardrails, you want to have mentors in place, because they need men and they need that, and they need you to be just the mom. And often it's going to look different. There's a learning curve to it. So Evan, thank you. That's such helpful and practical wisdom. And the respect thing, ladies, I read a book. It was called The Mother-Son Respect Effect. And sadly, the book didn't come out till I was practically done raising sons. But it taught me the importance of speaking respect to my sons. You know, moms, we want to hear I love you, and we want to hear those kind of words. And yet men want to hear I respect you. And when I started just changing from I love you, and I'll still say I love you, but when I switched and replaced love with I respect you, oh my goodness, it was unbelievable. And try it on your toddler. Your toddler son, just try it. Man, I respect the way whatever he did. And it's almost like emotional muscles start to build up, and you'll watch it. You'll watch them transform before your eyes. So it's learning these things as we are raising our boys into young men who are then going to be men. They're going to be the men that God has called them to be. And so you are just the mom, but you are also the mom, and you have role. You have an important role that God has entrusted to you. He has given you this responsibility. We will never understand his mysteries, but he has allowed you to be a single mom raising a young man, and God is going to do a beautiful work in his life and in yours, and you can trust him. You can put your trust in him. So, Evan, anything in closing that you want to share to encourage these moms?
I just always like to encourage and say that your children and your sons, God holds them in his hands, and that your sons are accountable to Christ. And so there is a certain point in life and in motherhood where you realize that God has all authority over us as parents, over you as moms, and also over your sons as well. And that's where, when we talk about you're just the mom, is in this very turbulent and fast-paced season, you can sit back and trust that God is God. He is who He says He is, and that He is in control of what happens. And that gives us a certain assurance that we can trust in, that you don't have to have all the answers, and you're not going to do everything right. And that's okay, because God is in control. God has a purpose for your son's life. God has a purpose for you, Mom. And right now in this busy season, it really feels like it's to raise your children in the way of the Lord. And that is a very high calling. And that's something that brought me encouragement whenever I was in my teen years, is just that I don't have to have all the answers, and I don't have to know everything. And that's okay.
It is okay. Well, Evan, thank you so much for joining us today. Ladies, thank you for joining us today. And as you count down to Christmas, I do pray that you will experience the presence of God when Dad is absent, that you will have the creativity, the wisdom, the strength that comes in your weakness, and the perspective of hope that you can pass on to your children. And yes, you are just the mom, but God is a faithful father to the fatherless. And when you look to Him and put your trust in Him, you and your children are going to be okay. Merry Christmas, and come back next week and we'll have some more insights and some more encouragement of hope for you. The Lord bless you.